If all is well, we are now live. If not, you missed the first line halfway. I'm pretty sure I was live though. It's almost as if they seem to have changed something once again. Now, obviously, I assume that I'm okay to be heard. But, yeah. Today we're going to talk about how we need to follow the science. And what's a better way than to follow the science? Well, obviously, it's by reading peer-reviewed papers. And I have something from the Journal of American Psychoanalytic Association. I know it's a joke. I mean, I'm a sociotherapist, so people call me a socio. And then there are always people who will say, so therefore you must be a sociopath. Fair enough. But doesn't that automatically mean that a psychoanalytic person is therefore a psycho? And the funny thing with socio is that you have to add the word path to make it a bad thing. But that's not true for the word psycho. When someone is a psycho, it pretty much says it all. Hi there, Leprechaun. Hi there, Michael Keller. Hi there, Davey. Welcome to my little stream. Now, I am sorry because YouTube being YouTube, I have no idea how well things are going. But I'm not going to let that stop me. Now, I've been made aware of this article, or rather, this is only an abstract, on Having Whiteness by Donald Moss. Now, who's Donald Moss? All I could find, and I didn't really look into it too much because it doesn't really matter, but he is a psychoanalytic person, a psychotherapist. Well, no, not a psychotherapist. Psychoanalytic person, sorry. He does psychoanalysis. And he wrote an article. No, he didn't read an article. He read a paper. And, I mean, if you see here at Sage Journals, you can read peer-reviewed stuff. And he has this written, and I'm going to read you the abstract first. Whiteness with a capital W, which is weird because obviously they're capital, it's the first word in the sentence, but that becomes important later, is a condition one first acquires and then one has. Which, in all fairness, is the biggest misnomer I have ever heard. Because every condition one first acquires and then has. I mean, well, how are you doing? Yeah, no, I've been diagnosed as that I have hay fever. Oh, so you have hay fever, which is a condition. Did you always have it? Well, maybe, I don't know, but they diagnosed it a few weeks ago. Well, now you have it. No kidding. It is first acquired and then one has it. Anyway, a malignant, parasitic-like condition to which white people, and then white between parentheses, I have no idea why, but that's not really true because I do know why. White people is in parentheses because it's not about your skin color. It is, but it's not, but it is, but it's not. White people have a particular suspectability. The condition is foundational, generating characteristic ways of being in one's body, in one's mind, and in one's world. Parasitic whiteness, now you see that whiteness comes with a capital, renders its host appetite ferocious. insatiable and perverse. Now, what does that mean? Yeah, that's very funny. It doesn't mean anything. How can I say that? Well, it renders its host appetites. Now, appetites can be all sorts of things. Preferences in food, in behavioral patterns, in sexual attraction, all these things. Well, does that then mean that people that are gay are affected by parasitic whiteness? Because, well, it renders them ferocious, insatiable, and perverse. Are you now saying that homosexuality is perverse? Well, there have been people saying that in the past. And there are people that seem to have sex addictions, and this happens between heterosexual people as well, but it does happen among homosexual people as well. Wait a second, maybe I shouldn't say homosexuals. Maybe I should say people with sex addictions are victims of parasitic whiteness, because a sex addiction is an insatiable, ferocious appetite. And certain forms of sexual addictions can indeed be considered perverse. How about people wanting to tell the world that they are vegan? Now, I have nothing against people wanting to be vegan. That's not the point. But there are a bunch of people who like to tell the world how they are vegan, to explain to them they have to be vegan too. This must be a form of parasitic whiteness as well, because the host appetite is ferocious. In this case, wanting to spread this message. Oh, you have to do this because yada yada yada. Insatiable, because no matter how many people will tell him, yeah, sure, mate, don't worry, we agree, but yeah, sure, they're going to push. And perverse, because they don't care about what other people think. Sorry. And, well, yeah, I mean, veganism is about appetites in it. I mean, it's literally about feeding. But no, obviously, these are not the examples this good man is talking about. And hi there, William. Let's continue. Where was I? Okay. These deformed appetites particularly target non-white people. But that's the thing. What's a non-white people? Because is non-white people with a different skin color than white? Now, I'm going to be really nasty, because I know very few people with a white skin color. And I know it's all about semantic. But aren't words important? Don't they have meaning? I mean, I'm Caucasian, yeah, sure, but I'm not white. I mean, if I put my hand next to a white piece of paper, you can clearly see a difference in hue and saturation of color. So, am I a non-white people? Who is white? Okay, semantics. And he's not going to answer, obviously, so let's continue with this. Once established, these appetites are nearly impossible to eliminate. Effective treatment consists of a combination of psychic and social historical interventions. Now, I know what psychic interventions are. I have no idea what social historical interventions are. But that's okay. Such interventions can reasonably aim only to reshape whiteness's infiltrated appetite, to reduce their intensity, redistribute their aims, and occasionally turn those aims toward the work of reparation. Now, I like that they use the word of reparation in this one. And I've mentioned this in one of my videos in the past, and maybe we talked about it in one of the streams in the past as well. Reparation is what the loser of a war pays to the winner of a war. And in all fairness, there is no equality in losing or winning a war. So if people talk to you about how this is a culture war and you're not sure about it, remember that the other side, whatever it means, is using the word reparation in what they want to explain is your duty as a person they are, well, basically trying to dominate. You've done something wrong, therefore you need to pay reparations. wait a second, were we at a war then? And did I lose that war because I didn't participate? And in all fairness, I really don't like it if we have to go to war, but the language, well, I mean, they are fighting words. Anyway, so, where was I? Reparations. When remembered as represented, the ravages wreaked by chronic condition can function either as a warning, as in never again, or as a temptation, great again. Now here's another nasty piece. Because what is the average person in the Western world thinking when someone refers to something in a very negative way and then say never again? I know the same phrase in Jewish, never again, has a meaning too. It has something to do with, well, something that happened during, what was it, the reign of Mohammed. But it's a long, long time ago. Hi there, Dimitris, thank you for your suggestion, by the way, on the other stream. Anyway, when people talk about never again, they're usually talking about something that has been so devastating to our society that generations later people are still talking about it. In this case, my humble opinion is when they talk about never again in the combination of whiteness, they're talking about the domination of the Nazis in Europe for a few years. By the way, they got beat. So, and when they talk about the ravages wreaked by chronic conditions, to me, they're talking about that. And then obviously there are people talking about we should never do this again. And there are people who are talking this was great, we should do it again. Because there are neo-Nazis. Funny enough, there are more neo-Nazis amongst the woke people than amongst the rest of society. The thing is, however, most of the woke people will not consider themselves neo-Nazis, even though they spout the very same talking points. But hey, there is not yet a permanent cure. There is no great Endlösung, no great solution. I'm sorry. How is this not, in combinations with the Nazis, an ominous thing to say? There is no guarantee against regression. There is not yet a permanent cure. Yes, well, there is no final solution. There's only one final solution. Hit a Nazi on the head. Yada yada blah blah blah. Hi there, Richard. I didn't start this conflict, but if it comes down to it, I will do my part to finish it. Now, Richard, I understand that sentiment and I agree with you. The worst part is that I fear more and more people will agree and feel the need to stand up. I still hope we can do this by talking to one another. I'm not quite sure. I should be sharing the abstract, by the way. Did I? No, obviously I didn't. Well, I'll show you the abstract real fast, because why the hell not? You can make a screenshot out of it if you want to. But here is the abstract of Donald Moss's piece. Now, Donald Moss is a 50 plus something white dude. I kind of like to think he's a guy, but who knows nowadays? I shouldn't assume, I guess. This is devastatingly stupid in my humble opinion, but this is only the abstract. And I could talk very long on the abstract alone. I've been talking for it a few minutes already. But you know what? It's kind of funny. I found more than just the abstract. Does that mean that I have the text? Yes, it does. I do have the text. Now this I will share with you as soon as I start reading it. Because come on. I mean, I need to share this. This is somewhat frustrating to me, and at the same time, people, are you aware? Because we should follow the science, shouldn't we? Here we go. Come on then. On having whiteness. Whiteness is a condition one first acquires, yada yada blah blah blah. This is the same. I mean, this is the abstract, and it's also the opening paragraph. This is not a traditional organized psychoanalytic text. Yeah, I didn't think that. I didn't think it was organized anything, and I'm not quite sure how this would have been a psychoanalytic text, because psychoanalysis you do on a person, not on a society. But anyway, no clear path links my argument to that of my predecessors. This formal peculiarity, my English is dreadful, might be the product of my effort to braid together two incompatible voices to write simultaneously from both sides, inside and outside the affliction I mean to study. Each position, inside and outside, offers an irreducibly distorted view. The one by the limits of sincere introspection, the other by the limits of theorized observation. The two perspectives turbulently converged during a recent experience in South Africa. Now, the thing is, he said recent, yeah? But I'm not going to go into this part just yet. Let's go back to this one. There are two ways of looking at this thing. A sincere introspection, and the other by the limits of theorized observation. Now, what is theorized observation? Theorized observation isn't an observation. It's thinking about something and trying to perceive an explanation for what you're seeing. But here's the thing. If you think of a certain object in a certain way, your thoughts will confirm your, how do you call it, biases? Well, biases are innate, aren't they? So if you start theorizing about a certain topic, you're going to stay within that topic. So if you're theorizing about how whiteness is parasitic, everything you will think of after that point will confirm what you've already thought of. There is a term for this. And obviously I can't remember it in English because I know this is bad of mine. But there is this thing called perceptional set. And a perceptional set means that you will look at certain things and you will interpret what you're seeing based on your perceptional set. So these are the things that you have in your mind already. Theorized observation isn't even observation. So it's not that you're seeing things and you are making them fit to your perceptional set. Theorized observation comes from the perceptional set. So it's not so much that you're interpreting what you see by your perceptional set. Once you theorize something, you do so from what you think you're going to see. Now, a good example of perceptional set, now this is interesting. We've all seen those pictures of, look at a picture, you see a duck or a hare, or you see an old woman or a young woman. This is something to do with your perceptional set. It kind of filters out what you see first. Now let me see if I can find a fast example of that. Now let's see if I can find it. Yes, here it is. Okay. Open a new window. There we go. So, if I show you this image, and I am showing you this image, you can see the young woman or you can see the old woman. Now, it's easy to see either if you know that they are both there. If you're not aware of this, your mind will do its own thing. So, for example, and I need to do this slightly different. Let's see if I can do it like that. Can I? If you look at this image like this, you're more likely to see the old woman. But if you look at the image like this, you don't see the old woman, you see the side of a young woman's face. I'm now making it doubly clear, fair enough. Yeah, I can go with you and you can go too. But this is also how our mind constantly works. We see perceived on what we are thinking. So, if we are going to theorize an observation, we are thinking about what we are thinking. There is no greater example of how to be affected by interpretation bias than that. So, I mean, you can still use theorized observation, but then you have to talk with people who do not share your point of view. And then you can find a middle ground. But considering that this article was written, this published study was written by one person, you are sure to know how many people he spoke with. And it's probably more than none, but probably not more than none either. That doesn't make sense, I know. Anyway, let's go back to the piece itself. Now, I'm going to highlight this bit a little bit. Oh, go away. Yeah, there you go. The two perspectives turbulently converged during a recent experience in South Africa. Mind you, this article is written in, if I'm not mistaken, 2020. Does it show anywhere here? No, it doesn't. Let me see if I can find it. Well, I already closed that one. Well, fuck it. But it hasn't been written that long ago, not that I think of. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this article wasn't written 40 years ago. Now, why do I say that? The turbulent converged during a recent experience in South Africa, so this didn't happen too long ago. We dropped off a black woman hitchhiker at her ramshackle township home. One of hundreds, hundreds we could see, all jammed together, helter-skelter on a barren, cut-off, underserved piece of land. Apartheid segregation still firmly in place. But apartheid segregation, I wanted to say, isn't happening in South Africa anymore, but that's not true. It is. It's just not the black people that are being segregated, it's the white people that are being segregated. And it has been for more than 20 years now. So either he's been there a very long time ago, or there you have it. See, here it says, submission for publication in 2020. So how recent was his experience? Because it had to be at least 40 years ago. But anyway, so he dropped off this woman in a helter-skelter piece of crap. And then when they came back to the hotel, back at the hotel, we spoke to one of the staff about how troubled we'd been by what we had seen. The young woman responded without hesitation. Well, she said, it's really simple. They have their houses, we have ours. She spoke with a serene confidence, pulling us in, indifferent to whatever resistance we, in our silence, might have felt. They have their houses, we have ours. That sentence, and especially that word we, repellent and implicating, inspires, haunts, and deforms what follows. This is funny. This is really funny. Why is this really funny? Well, first off, if this example is from the time of segregation in South Africa, It's several decades old. And yeah, I do have a house. Yeah. That's a very good question, and I will come to that. Now, either it was recent, and if it was recent, there were still ramshackle huts for black people to live in, just like there are white people who live in ramshackle huts or trailers or whatever you want to call them. But it's not based on segregation, or rather, it is based on segregation. But for the black people in South Africa, it's not racial segregation. It's not black versus white. It's poor versus wealthy. Most wealthy people in South Africa aren't white. So it can't have been whiteness, can it? I mean, the young woman responding in the hotel, are we to assume she was a white woman? Because there are wealthy black people as well. Hell, even during segregation, most of the black people in South Africa lived in normal houses. Only the very poor lived in ramshackle huts or trailers, just like the very poor do now. And some of them are black and some of them are white, because you will always have very poor people in corrupt societies. And trust you me, South Africa is pretty corrupt. But the whole idea that I will focus on whiteness as a condition one first acquires and then has is basically a lie, because he based it on the we part. But wealthy black people will not identify as poor black people. So are these wealthy black people now afflicted by whiteness? How does that make sense? For example, if we look at China, a lot of Chinese people do not care about the Uyghurs. Are these Chinese people affected by whiteness? The choice of word being used by this person, this Donald Moss, is in all fairness a lie. The thing why I think this is a lie is because it's based on what we are now noticing with the postmodern movements in Europe and America, where whiteness has to be a problem. But if whiteness is a problem, we have to be able to explain why whiteness is a problem. Because obviously, when something is a problem, people should be able to point at it and say, well, there you have it. That's the problem. And they can't. So to create an air of believability, of value, we have to follow the science. And science are published articles. And Donald Moss is now published in 2020. March 2020, if I saw correctly, a moment ago. How is this following the science? This is just a bunch of hooey to explain what this person had in his head to begin with. His perceptional set is white people bad. Therefore, when he thinks about it, he's going to find examples of white people bad, even if he has to make them up. Because again, there is nowhere in this text saying that the young woman was a white woman. And trust you me, black people do work at hotels in South Africa. In all fairness, there were black people working in hotels during apartheid in South Africa. Because, let's be honest, most people in South Africa aren't white. Actually, there are no white people in South Africa. They all have a slightly tangy skin color. Even the Caucasians aren't white. But never mind that. Is he going to make us assume that the woman he spoke to in the hotel was a white woman? The receptionist was a white woman. But these are positions often held by anyone. Anyway, he will focus on whiteness as a condition, and he comes back to his one first acquires and then has a malignant parasitic condition to which white people have a particular susceptibility. But that's weird, Because in his example, the woman he spoke to may as well have been a brown woman. So, is she inflicted with whiteness even though she isn't white? The condition is foundational, generating characteristic ways of being in one's body, in one's mind, and in one's world. The thing is, I want everyone to be in one's body and one's mind. It's called creating the self. This is one of the problems we are seeing, for example, with people being gender dysphoric. They have the feeling that their mind and their body do not belong. But apparently, if you feel that your mind and your body belong, and you are part of the world, you have parasitic whiteness. And parasitic whiteness renders its host appetite ferocious, insatiable, and perverse. Again, these are empty lines. Are we now all of a sudden ferocious? Do we want to eat anything, everything? Other people, perhaps? And we can't have enough. There has to be more. And we are perverse. Funny enough, look at this image from a slightly different point of view. Let's say that sexual deviancy can be considered perverse. Sexual addictions happen. If you are sexually addicted, you have a ferocious appetite for sex. You are partially insatiable, and obviously you're perverse. So now, being a sexual deviant means that you have parasitic whiteness? Does that then mean that people afflicted with certain perverse sexual tendency have parasitic whiteness? Is a pedophile someone that is inflicted with parasitic whiteness? It doesn't make sense. It's a bunch of words to try and explain something that wasn't explained. It goes on and on. There is a perception this person has, and then he's going to continue with why he feels his perception is correct. I'm not sure if this man cite any sources. He hasn't yet. Let's continue. Oh, wait a second. Sorry, Dimitri. You have a friend that a long time ago was dating a blonde South African woman in South Africa, but she was not white, so she was living in a segregated houses. And he was shocked because she was white looking. Well, that's the thing. In South Africa, there are basically three groups. The Caucasians, the Khoisan, and the Zulu. The Khoisan and the Caucasians were there first. The Khoisan used to be nomadic, and when the Dutch settled Kaap de Goede Hoop, they weren't there. But they were nomadic, so maybe they were gone for a period of time. And after the Dutch have been there for a while, the Khoisan came by again. The Zulu came later. The first time the Zulu and the Dutch really had any big dealing with each other, it was when the both of them turned on the Khoisan to attack the Khoisan. The Khoisan had attacked the Dutch before, and the Dutch had won. And again, the Khoisan were trying to muscle back their ancestral nomadic land. Never understood that. If you're nomadic, it's not your land. If it is your land, why are you nomadic? But that's me. And the Zulu wanted to help the Dutch. Now, I won't say the Dutch and the Zulus had a great understanding with one another. I mean, obviously, history is what it is, and people fight amongst one another anyway. But the Zulu was the third group to enter South Africa, not the first. So, would that then mean that the Zulu has an insatiable, perverse hunger because they wanted more land? They fought with the Dutch against the Khoisan to replace the Khoisan, or the Khoi, or the Hottentot, as it was once named in Europe. We are not allowed to say Hottentot anymore because that word is, naughty word. No idea why, but it doesn't really mean anything other than a description of these people. But whatever. I've always been told that these people were called Hottentot because of the way they spoke. It's kind of funny because if we talk about barbarians, the word barbarian came from the way people spoke. The Romans considered the way the barbarians talk to constantly be bar, 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 and hence the word barbarian came. The Dutch thought that the Hottentot sounded like hot, 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 and named them Hottentot. Anywho, stupidity is what stupidity is. Let's continue with this stupidity. Where was I? Appetite, ferocious, insatiable, and perverse. Sexual deviancy, for example. These deformed appetites particularly target non-white peoples. But how then explain to me why white people can be victims of this as well? But then again, he did say particularly, not solely. So maybe that's it. But I think it has to happen. It's based on where you are, because if we look at South Africa, white people at this point in time are the lesser of people, and the Khoisan is the second minority of South Africa. The Zulu is now not just numerically the majority, but they also have most of the power in South Africa. Now, one could say, well, see, but that's why they're so negative towards the white people, because the white people always held power and it's revenge. And I'm like, okay, sure. If that is true, it's still, well, disgusting, but it's possible. Then explain to me why the Khoisan are being discriminated against. Because the Khoisan never held power in South Africa. But they're still being attacked by the black part of the country as well. Probably not as much as the poor white people, but still a lot more than most of the other people. It's and yes, Richard Beyer, one person's deviancy is another person's sexuality. I know. And I don't care about the one drop rule, Davey. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, let's continue. These deformed appetites particularly target non-white people. Once established, these appetites are nearly impossible to eliminate. So basically, if you have the appetite to see racism, you will see racism, and that appetite is nearly impossible to... Does that then mean that what he calls whiteness is something that he's infected with himself? Obviously, that mustn't be true, because he's here to help us. Effective treatment consists of a combination of psychic and social historical interventions. Now, I understand what psychic interventions are, but social historical interventions? What the hell is a social historical intervention? Such interventions can reasonably aim only to reshape whiteness, with a capital, infiltrated appetites. So we have to use social historical interventions to make people understand, I assume, that what he's saying is utter tripe. Anyway, to reduce their intensities, redistribute their aims, and occasionally... Oh, blah, blah, blah. I'm scrolling the wrong direction. Where was I? Such interventions can reasonably aim only to reshape whiteness, infiltrated appetites, to reduce their intensities, redistribute their aims, and occasionally turn those aims towards the work of reparation. And this word here, good people of the interwebs, You know who owes reparation to whom? This word has a very strong meaning. Reparations are being paid by the loser of a war to the winner of a war. So if your country owes reparations, it means it has lost a war. Germany had to pay lots of reparations after the Second World War. You know, it's pretty much. Why? Well, because they lost. They had to repair the countries that they damaged, and the lands where damage were done. Had they won, the countries that would have been conquered had paid these reparations. Well, they would have been Germany then, but they would have still paid these reparations. Reparations are being paid by the ones that lose a war. Are you really wondering why people call it a cultural revolution and a cultural war? These are the words they are using. So, if you are affected by whiteness, changing yourself isn't enough. You have to pay penance. No, sorry, not penance, because, well, it is their God, let's be honest, but you have to pay reparation. You lost the war. Don't you realize? Your whiteness means you lost the war. Well, you haven't, but you have. When remembered and represented, the ravages wreaked by the chronic conditions can function as a warning. When remembered and represented, the ravages wreaked by the chronic condition can function either as a warning, never again, or as a temptation, great again. Now, if we're talking about whiteness and then use terms like never again, the first thing that jumps in my head, and I'm going back to the war, is the Second World War. Because after the Second World War, certain things have happened, and people said, never again. We should never allow this to happen again. Don't worry. People say things, but they don't care about what they say, because everything that happened in the Second World War has happened several times since. It's just different because different locations. I mean, yeah, Hitler did a lot of bad stuff, but let's be honest, Mao Zedong was far worse. And the CCP at this point in time is far worse than Hitler was. But no, you're not allowed to recognize this. Because Chinese aren't white, are they? When remembered and represented, the ravages wreaked by the chronic conditions will either have a never again or a great again, which means that either people are against the Nazis or they are for the Nazis. Memorialization alone, therefore, is no guarantee against regression. There is not yet a permanent cure. Why did I see permanent cure before? I'm pretty sure we saw permanent cure before. Well, maybe, I can't remember. I can't care. A permanent cure, or the final solution, Well, yeah, great again thing might be an obvious swipe at Trump as well. True. That is true. But let's be honest, a lot of blood and soil people want to make their societies great again too. And I never thought Trump to be a, blood and soul person. So yeah, there is that. Whiteness as a way of being and a way of knowing. Or rather, how can I say people say something, think something, and how can I project the way of that? In what follows, I will capitalize whiteness to signify parasitic whiteness in an acquired multidimensional condition. A way of being, a mode of identity, a way of knowing and sorting the objects constituting one's human surround. Whiteness should not be confused with lowercase whiteness, a commonly used signifier of racial identity. People, I have to admit, this man is an idiot because there is no racial identity. You can have an ethnical identity, but not a racial identity. Because, and I've said this so many times before, every human in this bloody time frame on Earth is Homo sapiens sapiens. Our race is Homo sapiens sapiens. So it is not a commonly used signifier of racial identity. It's a commonly used signifier of ethnical identity. And it's not even that, to be honest. But never mind. In parasitic whiteness, it is, apparently. Whiteness should not be confused with lowercase whiteness. So it's not just white people that have parasitic whiteness. Non-white people can have it too. Which is weird. But sure, why not? But then again, it's true, because how many times have people said that people like Thomas Sowell, Larry the Elder, Candace Owens, these are black people, well, brown, and they have been called Oreos. They have white supremacy in them. I actually saw an image some time ago now, so I'm not going to look it up. How Candace Owens was talking to protesters at a university, and there were a bunch of white kids shouting at Candace Owens how she was a white supremacist. It doesn't get any better than that, but obviously these people are blind to their own stupidity. Parasitic whiteness infiltrates our drives early on. The infiltrated drive binds id, ego, and superego into a singular entity, empowered to dismiss and override all forms of resistance. The drive apparatus of whiteness, scroll, divides the object world into two distinct zones. In one, the whiteness infiltrated drive works in a familiar ways, inhabited, checked, distorted, and transformed, susceptible, that is, to standard neurotic deformations. In the other, however, none of this holds true. There are the liberated drive goes rogue, unchecked and unlimited, inhibited by neither the protests of its objects nor the counterforces of its internal structures. Now, this is interesting. I am not a psychoanalyst, so I can't pretend that I know everything about psychoanalysis. But Freud started with his id, ego, and superego. They are always three separate entities within a person. The id drives your wants, your hunger. Your ego is basically trying to make sure that you don't go into your id too much. You try to behave in a normal way. And your superego basically tells you how great you are. And these three things need to be in a sort of a balance, but they can never be a singular entity. Because if they are a singular entity, one will have the upper hand. Because there is no such thing as a singular entity where you want and therefore take, whilst at the same time trying to limit yourself from taking because you shouldn't, and explaining to yourself why taking is a bad thing. Id is the one that wants to take. Ego is the one that says, one step at a time, please. And superego is why you should take only one step at a time. The example I can easily get is, for example, your id feeling is, I'm hungry, I want to eat. Your ego will say, well, yeah, you know what? But I'm in the middle of a job interview, so I can't eat now. So your ego keeps your id in check. Your superego will then look at yourself and say, come on, don't be stupid. Of course you're not going to eat now. You're in a job interview. You can't do this. And somehow these three are combined in one, which is, according to the explanations of psychoanalysis, based on the id, ego, superego point of view anyway, not a possibility. Now, let's continue. The liberated drive goes rogue, unchecked, and unlimited. If the liberated drive goes rogue, unchecked, and unlimited, that means your id is in control. You are driven by your wants. You will not take no for an answer. You will not take no for an answer. You will not wait up. You will move on. Ooh, I need food. Hey, look, there is food. Grab. This is, by the way, how a lot of thieves started stealing. I want, I take. Boom. Hi there, Paulo, by the way. Any infant is vulnerable to the parasite of whiteness. The extent of the infant's vulnerability depends on how the infant is mapped, how it is positioned, where it is placed. Basically, what they're saying is how it is raised. Of course, any infant is vulnerable to id, not to parasitic whiteness. Parasitic whiteness is bullshit. But any child is nearly completely its id. If a baby wants something, it takes or cries. If a child wants a candy and it can take it, it will, or it will ask for it. And if he doesn't get it, he will throw a tantrum. Until, of course, he was learned not to do that. But as soon as he starts learning not to do that, he develops his ego. And slightly after that, his superego is being developed. So, any infant is vulnerable to the parasite of whiteness means it's an id thing. Did I already say hi, Paulo? I'm not sure. Hi there, Paulo. The extent of the infant's vulnerability depends on how the infant is mapped. And mapped in this case means raised. How it is positioned, where it is placed. Now, if you see, most small children will play with each other. A brown child will play with a white child, will play with a black child, will play with a yellow child, because children don't care. And after a while, and this is something true as well, if you live in a society where the vast majority of kids and adults is one color, those children will tend to turn to the predominant color it knows because that's safety. They recognize that they have something in common with them, which they have not as much in common with certain people in color, which is the first significant identifier, which is skin color. Then again, most children will turn off of that real fast. Yeah, my first time memory is crap. It's the heat. It's really killing me. Anyway, back to this one. Children will go to their own. Now, for a small child, they don't recognize skin color as a significant change. What happens is that at a certain point in time, certain behaviors from certain groups will start splitting society. At this point in time, there are kids that believe in the postmodern way because that's what they hear in school, and there are kids who do not. The ones that do are turning against the ones that do not. This is not about skin color. This is about group identity. They will identify with the group they think they belong to, the group that they have respect for and respect from. So all infants orient themselves in relation to a first initial mapping line is true, but at the same time, it's bullshit to consider this a point of whiteness, because this is true for all infants of all skin colors of all cultures. And they will align according to the mapping line, which is how they're being raised by their parents. So a child born in, let's say, Lebanon is more likely to hate Jews than a child born in, let's say, Portugal. Because there's more chance that he's being told how to hate Jews from his parents in Lebanon than he is in Portugal or Germany. Let's be honest, even in Germany, the Jewish hate at this point in time is ridiculously low. Because culture and parents are a main mapping line. There is no such thing as this whiteness then, because it's just an excuse for certain environmental markers. Now, these environmental markers aren't definite. I mean, a child can first learn to look at it in one way, and then when he gets older, he might learn to look at it in a different way. The word might, however, is important, because if I'm going to take a child born in Lebanon, and he's being told by his parents that all Jews are bad, and when the day comes you should ask the stones and the trees will tell you that there's a Jew hiding behind them. If you believe that, then that's their life. But if they start knowing other people that may be Jewish, they might learn them to be good people as well. And therefore they can learn to get rid of their initial mapping. This is happening so often. It's shit. Hell, even the story of what was it? Romeo and Juliet. These two children, born of two different families, who constantly are at war with each other, get to know each other and fall in love with each other. They break their mapping. They break their doctrine, whatever you want to call it. It happens so often that Romeo and Juliet is almost an archetypical story. It's not almost an archetypical story, by the way. It is. Capulet and the Montagues. Thank you, Ludicrous. Where would I be without you guys? But yes, that is the story. So the initial mapping is nothing more than that. You're being raised. Until a certain point in time, you're being raised by your parents. Then you're going to be raised by your peers. And then you're going to identify yourself. This is normal. But here it's being pushed as a form of weakness, because you are more vulnerable to the parasite of whiteness. How? The thing is, I'm not that far in, obviously, but he hasn't taken the time to truly explain what whiteness is. He hasn't taken the time to explain how it portrays itself. He only gave an example of something that happened, why he and his friend disliked something, and the woman he was talking to thought it was normal. But at no point was it known if that woman was a white or a black girl. Thank you, Michael. Anyway, any infant is vulnerable to parasitic whiteness. I've done that again. Why is it scrolling so badly? Sorry. All infants orient themselves in a relation to their first initial mapping. Yeah, sure. On this side of the line will live its familiars, us, while on that side of the line live its strangers, them. Which is true. This is true for every human out there. We will start identifying with a group, and once we identify with a group, it is us versus them. It always is. Till we start recognizing this. Till we start recognizing that, wait a second, the differences between us and them aren't that big. And then all of a sudden, us and them becomes one. It's kind of funny because, what's his face? Omar Sharif. Omar Sharif is a, what was it? Social psychologist. He had this study. It's called it's colloquially called the Robber Cave experiment. It's not the Robber Cave experiments. The study was on conflict resolution, if I'm not mistaken. But the Robber Cave experiment was one of the experiments that showed that two groups that are identical, the only difference is that one group was called, I can't remember, the Eagles, and the other group was called the Boars or something, whatever. And because of the fact that one group was white Protestant kids called the Eagles, and the other group was white Protestant kids called Boars, and they were given tasks to basically put against at odds with one another, to have a competition with one another, you started seeing that they were going to get into infighting. But once you gave both groups tasks where they had to work together to achieve goals, those hostilities disappeared and they became one group. So, if anything, Omar Sharif shown that if you want to stop the segregation of people, you should stop putting them aside. Now, what is the parasite of whiteness? It's an excuse to prove that people are putting each other in different groups. It's postmodernist tribe that says, well, white people, well, they must hate people of color. Well, not all white people, but if you're affected by the parasite of whiteness, you must hate everyone who's not white. It's such a terrible way of talking, because it's feeding in the us versus them mentality. It's not bringing people together, it's tearing them apart. For every infant, this mapping line founds, delineates and defines the place of the stranger, which is normal. There's a reason why people say stranger danger. It has nothing to do with skin color, it has to do with stranger danger. Anyway, as such, it marks the site of the first organized and enduring representation of an external source of anxiety, which is true, it does. Beginning with the onset of stranger anxiety, stranger danger, the infant, while working to find its place in the world, will perpetually aim for safety, avoiding as best it can any external object located on the dangerous stranger side of the line, which is not true. We hope that this is true, but let's be honest, if you tell a kid not to do something, there is a large amount of kids who will then do it. Because, especially for boys, part of growing up is finding a way to deal with things that are dangerous to you, that are scary to you. So the idea that stranger danger is based on ethnicities is bullshit. We tell our children not to get into a car with people they don't know. We're not telling our kids not to get into a car with black people they don't know. We don't tell them not to get into a car with Muslim people they don't know. We tell them to don't get in a car with people they don't know. Period. Whether they are white, black, purple, green, what the hell? It doesn't matter. Do you know them? No. Do your parents know them? No. Don't get in their car. This is stranger danger. But it's true that it's basically one of the first things that can cause a source of anxiety with children. But then again, dealing with our anxieties is part of growing up. And hi there, John. Haven't seen you in a long time, mate. Hope you're doing well. Well, and say hi to my better half then, John. Anyway, let's continue. Where was I? Parasitic whiteness works to turn this foundational line into an impermeable wall, to permanently fix the place of the non-white stranger on the far side of the wall, there to be sorted and categorized and eventually mastered. This is bullshit. If stranger danger is parasitic whiteness, it's not to create an impermeable wall to permanently fix the place of non-white strangers. It's to permanently fix the place of recognizing where you're safe and where you're not. And this, again, has nothing to do with ethnicity. It has to do with certain behaviors. And sorted and categorized, perhaps. I mean, people do need to recognize patterns, and sure, that is a form of categorization. But you do not master it. You recognize patterns. You cannot master patterns. Nor can you master people who are not yours. So, this is... He's talking about something which is perfectly normal evolvement of the individual, and then tries to add something to it. Well, yeah, no, I mean, you want to learn how to be safe, but it's also because you want to be better than everyone else. Our merely unruly sexualities may exert, I'm going to scroll again, a constant pressure to eroticize the bodies and beings of strangers, transgressively aiming to defy the wall, to integrate those bodies and beings, to take them in. But the rogue sexuality of parasitic whiteness add to that. They negatively eroticize non-white bodies and beings. These objects now marked are wanted still, but not wanted to be taken in, but simply to be taken. Not to be loved, but to be hated. This is bullshit. I don't understand why, by the way, he makes a difference between non-white bodies and beings. Do you now also have non-white beings like, for example, well, I mean, you negatively eroticize a non-white person, but you also negatively eroticize a non-white dog or horse. I mean, what? And the idea that you want to have sex with someone without loving them, yeah, sure, this is a thing that happens. People do that. In some cases, this can be rape. Let's be honest, unfortunately, this happens. But it has nothing to, well, it doesn't have to have something to do with parasitic whiteness. I'm pretty sure that the grooming gangs in the UK weren't doing it because of parasitic whiteness. Then again, who knows? I mean, they did feel themselves better as their victims. And their skin color can be considered white because, let's be honest, there has been a time that these people were considered white. Now, of course, they aren't because they're Muslim, and now that's a signifier of not being white. How fast certain things change in our world. But never mind that. The idea of people being how do you call it? Constantly changing how they appreciate other people is normal. There are, for example, how do you call it? Perverse drivers. People may be sexually attracted to something that they at one point have a sexual attraction to, but will never give in to because it goes against their personality. Then again, I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing. But the idea that if a white person is sexualizing a non-white person, that this is a negative thing, I'm sorry, but there is a lot of love between people. It's not based on their skin color. Now, it's true that some people may have a preference for certain skin colors, but even then, it can still jump. Because falling in love with someone it's not just based on how people look. How do I know this? Well, in all fairness, if I'm going to explain to you what I think is a beautiful woman, I can tell you that none of the women I have ever been with, when I had a relationship with, hell, even the wife I married, and I love her sincerely and deeply, she doesn't fit the idea of a perfect woman, the way she looks, the way I look at women in my head. I mean, to me, red hair, red long hair, long woman, thinner than me, that's the perfect thing. Now, my wife is thinner than me, so she has that going for herself, but she doesn't have red hair. She never had red hair. When I met her, she didn't have red hair. But she had something else. And I can't put my finger on it, but it made me want to stay with her. It made me want to marry her. These things are true as well. When I was about 18, 19 years old, I had a girlfriend that came from the Dutch Antilles. She was a black woman, sure. There was something about her. We clicked. In the end, it didn't work out because unfortunately that happens. But if you would have told me, oh, you have a black girlfriend, even at the time when it happened, I was surprised by it. But it happened still. Now, did I objectify her? No, I didn't. We never had sex, to be honest. But then again, that was my age. And there were other things we did, don't worry. But it's all part of who we are. So once you like someone, different skin color than yours, different sexuality than yours, you can fall in love with someone. For example, as a man, you can fall in love with a woman who's a lesbian. You'll get out of it soon enough, I hope. Sometimes not, because sometimes people really get hurt like that. But it can happen. Is that then the fault of the woman you fell in love with? No, obviously not. Because if you fall in love with someone, it says something about you. But you're responding to something in the other person. And it's not based on skin color. Pheromones, for example, play a big role in that as well. And the way people smile, the way people laugh, the way people talk, all these things have value. People tend not to look at other people as objects. Now, I know that the left... No, sorry. I'm going to stop calling these people left, by the way. I'm going to start calling these red-wing people. Because it's red what they want, not left what they want. So these red-wing people constantly need to point out how someone is like this or that. Even though they can't prove it. Even though they can't constantly keep it real, so to speak. No, if you look at a black woman, you're sexualizing them. Well, that's not true. In all fairness, I'm not looking at different women to have sex with. I'm married, and funny enough, that means something to me. But at the same time, I had one black girlfriend, fair enough. And when I had a black girlfriend, I didn't look at white girls to have sex with because I was with a girlfriend. Again, this is the person I am. It's weird, but it's an excuse. Our merely unruly sexualities may exert a constant pressure to eroticize the bodies and beings of strangers? No, not constant. You do that until you find a partner. And for most people, once you found a partner, you kinda stop doing this. You're not eroticizing the bodies and beings of strangers. Not quite sure why it's body and being, but never mind that. Because once you have a partner, you tend to want to stay with that partner. If you don't, then you haven't got a partner, you got a play date. Fair enough. Anyway, parasitic whiteness further demeans its... so let me scroll up a bit. Where was I? Parasitic whiteness, come on. Every time when I scroll, it jumps so strangely. And here we are. Parasitic whiteness further demeans its non-white bodies and beings by way of a naturalizing system of naming and classifications. Once it has mapped and transformed its non-white object into such a fixed taxonomical category, the rogue sexuality of the parasitic whiteness can expand its aim. It permanently maps them as external away from there. Whether that is, these objects are available for limitless use, limitless labor, or limitless kind. This is nonsense. What he's talking about basically is slavery. And this is not a way of looking at slavery, because let's be honest, most slavery happened in Africa and in the Middle East and in Asia. In the Western world, slavery happened far less. I mean, let's be honest, nearly all Western countries banished slavery in the 19th century. Most of the rest of the world did that in the 20th century, and in some countries it's still allowed. None of these countries where it's still allowed, by the way, are Western countries. And I know, then people will say, yeah, but did you not think of wage slavery? There is no such thing as wage slavery. Yeah, but what about the prisoners who are forced to work? Yeah, they're prisoners. It's part of their punishment. And yeah, I need to drink a bit of water, Dimitri, you're right. I've been talking a lot. I tend to do that. Okay, let's continue. Parasitic whiteness generates a state of constantly eroticized excitement, a drift toward frenzy. No, it doesn't. I mean, I'm sorry, what he's now talking about is a sexual deviancy. This is not normal behavior of anyone. This is the behavior of... I mean, if we're talking about eroticized excitement, we're talking about sexual deviancy. Fix, control and arouse. Want, hate and terrorize. Those are not the same lines. Fix, control and arouse has nothing to do with want, hate and terrorize. They're not in any way, shape or form in the same line. Whiteness resides at this always volatile edge, in a state of permanent skirmish, always taking on the never obliterated resistances of its non-white objects. But does that then mean that the rape gang in the UK, several rape gangs in all fairness, where white girls were the victim, the perpetrators had parasitic whiteness? No, of course not. But yeah, sure, why not? Why not? I mean, how many white girls have been raped by black people? And I'm not going to say all black people rape white girls. That's nonsense. But we have black criminals and we have white criminals. I can remember not too long ago there was this study that proven that there were a lot of white girls raped by black men in America, but there were hardly any black girls raped by white men. And this in itself was proof of racism, because they didn't even want to rape black women. So what is it? They are constantly wanting to, or they don't want to. And yes, indeed, ludicrous, the Bible wasn't written by white guys. Well, that's not true, because maybe they were. Again, the Middle Eastern are Caucasian. Well, most of the Middle East is Caucasian as well. And then again, Jewish people are not really Caucasian, I think. I'm not quite sure on that one. Okay, let's continue. Where was I? Okay, this is the first time that they reference to something. Let's see what they reference to. Here is that frenzy revealed. A grounding frenzy whose resonance, though often much muted, continue to be communicated via parasitic whiteness. An Anglican missionary observed that the first toy given to white children in Jamaica was often a whip. How often? The overseer Thomas Thistlewood, who managed 42 slaves in St. Elizabeth Parish, kept a horrifying diary that described how in a single year he whipped 3/4 of the men and raped half of the women. When he moved to a different plantation, he threatened to dismember the enslaved men and women under his care, devising tortures and humiliations that included forcing some to defecate into other slaves' mouths and urinate in others' eyes, rubbing lime juice in their wounds after flogging, and covering a whipped bound man in molasses while leaving him for the flies and mosquitoes. Okay, first off, if Thomas Thistlewood, never heard of the guy, did this, it's disgusting. But if your example is one story, and you assume that therefore this is true for everyone everywhere, you are not only an idiot, you are inciting hatred based on your lies. Could there have been a Thomas Thistlewood? Yeah, sure, there could have been. Who knows? Could it be true that the first toy given to white children in Jamaica was often a whip? I'm going to say bullshit. Because let's be honest, toddlers have toys. What can a toddler do with a whip? 4-year-olds have toys. What can a 4-year-old do with a whip? So, not to mention that this whole example is anecdotal at best, and let's be honest, there is a chance that this is made up. I mean, yeah, sure, SEP 2020. Well, no, yeah, that makes it clear for me to find. SEP 2020. Oh, you know what? Let's Google SEP 2020 real fast. Let's see what we can get. SEP 2020. Oh, bad typing. 2020. Here we go. Central Economic Plan 2020. I'm pretty sure that's not what he meant. Oh, where? But I'm looking in the Netherlands. I shouldn't be looking in the Netherlands. I should be looking everywhere. Here we go. Okay, community eligibility provisions. I'm pretty sure that's not the SEP he meant. Community Eligibility Report 2020, Food Research in Action. I'm pretty sure that's not it either. When SAP surveyed non-profit leaders, nope, not it. Concurrent enrollment program, yeah, no. Maricopa Community College, yeah, well, you have to have community college. Clinical exercise physiologist, no, that's not it either. See, the thing is, it's almost as if they quote something, but what is he quoting? I'm sorry, this is... Then again, maybe it's at the bottom. Let's not be too harsh, shall we? Anyway, whiteness resides at this always volatile edge. No, it doesn't. Opaque to itself and hyper-conscious of those objects, whiteness pursues the impossible, a stable synthesis, an end point. Now, this is funny, because this sentence doesn't really say anything. And it's nasty of me to say, but it doesn't. Opaque to itself and hyper-conscious of those objects, the ones where he was talking earlier, the violent edge thingy and the fix, control, arouse, want, hate and terrorize thingy. But here's the second part of that sentence. Whiteness pursues the impossible, a stable synthesis. In this case, one could translate a stable synthesis with a stable society, an endpoint. But if this is true, does it then want a stable society where it rules over other ethnicities? Or does it want a stable endpoint? Because the two things can't be the same. Because if one is a ruler and one is the oppressed, there isn't stability. So if you want stability, you want equality. Not equity, but equality. You want people to have the same opportunities in life. That will, the more equality we have in opportunities, the more stable our society is. If we look at, for example, America now, the unrest isn't because people don't have equal chances. The unrest is because there's a group of people that don't want equality, they want equity. By the way, they don't want equity for them. They want equity for everyone else. They think that they themselves should be above this base urge, I guess. But here's the thing. If whiteness pursues the impossible, a stable synthesis, then whiteness is the only good thing in this society. Is this a Freudian slip? That's an interesting point. I really have to think about this one. I'm curious what you think. But this seems to me that this is a Freudian slip. Okay. It can therefore never rest. No, because stability is very different to get by. Blindly then, it continues forward and unendingly bent on conquering. No, wait a second. Conquering doesn't create stability. Conquering is a form of instability. There seems no backward path, no mode of retreat. But if the goal is stability, retreat is not an option. Then again, if conquering is your way, retreat is also not an option. That's interesting. If you want to perceive a goal, you have to be relentless in trying to achieve that goal. But being relentless doesn't mean you're being aggressive towards others. Again, this is a weird way of... But yeah, I agree with you, Ludicrous. This is basically complete projection. And at no point does he come with an example. Well, obviously the one that I just wrote you, but that's not an example, that's an anecdote. If only it could totally and permanently transform these objects, turn the once feared and unknown into the now reduced and measured, turn the once unique and overwhelming into the now fungible and owned. No, stability doesn't come with ownership. Stability comes with equality. Whiteness originates not in the innocence, but in the entitlement. But how are you not entitled? You're basically telling the rest of the world that this is how they think. How is that not a form of entitlement? Okay, here we come to the religious part of this. And God said, let us make men in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Whiteness, taking this injunction as its own, transforms it into epistemology of entitled dominion, a mode of coming to know in which identity and entitlement are fused. But Christianity didn't come from whiteness. Well, maybe it did, but it didn't come from white people. Christianity started in the Middle East. Now, again, yeah, you could consider them white because they are Caucasian, in a way. But either they're white or they're not. If whiteness is based on ethnical markers, then yeah, maybe. No, the thunder noises are over here. The slight storm, but it sounds to be very far off, so I don't think it'll come close. I live on a small island, so there is that. Whoa. You might be right, Ludicrous, but the Mudvayne locomotive just pulls through everything. Well, I have to point out all this nonsense, don't I? Well, I've been busy for 1.5 hours. But anyway, I'm not going to do the whole thing, guys. Don't worry. After a few hours and all that, I can also surmise that the author is full of the brown, smelly stuff. I can't deny that, John. I can't deny that. But anyway, so religion, Christianity, is not a white thing. Now, it's true that there have been very many influences in Europe, and some of them could be considered Germanic, and yeah, sure, Germanic could be considered white, whatever. But the concept of the one God isn't something that came from Europe. And we didn't make it our own. We grew up with it, so to speak. Anyway, whiteness, taking this injunction as its own, transforms it into an epistemology of... Oh no, wait a second, I already did that one. Within the terms of the epistemology of entitled domain, knowledge becomes both a sign of superiority and an instrument of power. Then ask the Jesuits why they found it so important to try and convert the people in America without dominion. Well, the Jesuits mustn't have been white then. The steps from knowledge to dominion are clear. The more we know, then the more we can do. The more we can do, the more we can control. The more we can control, the more we can dominate. And finally, the more we can dominate, the more we are realizing our divine mandate to have dominion. bullshit. This is not how it goes. So let's go back to the beginning. The more we can do, the more we can control. That's not how it works. The more we can do, the more we do. There is no focus on control. But let's pretend that there is. The more we can do, the more we do. The more we can control, the more we will control. There's a difference between controlling and dominating. Controlling doesn't have to be dominating. And okay, the more we dominate, the more strife we are creating in our society. Again, if the goal is to have a stable society, domination cannot be part of it. I mean, can you remember how well domination went in Russia? Or in Spain when they turned extreme right wing? Or in Greece when they turned extreme left wing? These things pop up and fall down again and again and again. Domination is not a way to create a stable society. Even if everyone in that society has the same ethnical markers, domination is not the way to create a stable society. Anywho, have dominion over every living thing that moveth upon earth. Okay, well, you know what? Maybe that's in the Bible. I don't care. Triumphantly submitting to this mandate, Whiteness pursues a utopia of permanent satisfaction and assign a non-white people to the task of being its ideal, infinitely need-satisfying object, there to service its ferocious and uncheckable appetites. You know, the funny thing is, there has been several cultures in the history of humanity where this was the thing. It wasn't based on whiteness, non-whiteness, but it always has been a thing about upper classes, lower classes. This was, for example, before the English were in India. This was in Europe during the time of feudalism. This was in Europe in the countries where socialism was a big thing. This was in China when socialism was a big thing. This was in Cuba when socialism was a big thing. This was in Cambodia when socialism was I tend to see a pattern evolving here, don't you? This postmodernist crap is... it's projection. It is. But he's not projecting how he thinks we are thinking. He is projecting how he is thinking. These are not the ideas of whiteness. These are his ideals. This is his end goal. Whiteness pursues a utopia. I'm sorry, utopia is only pursued by a certain group of people. These people can have any skin color you want. Because let's be honest, Zimbabwe is now being ruled by people of the same ideological pattern that want a utopia. And I know it's a terrible joke, it's not even a joke, but utopia is an old Greek word as far as I've been told, meaning no such place. Modwayne, you are going full professor. You are going to full professor from a plain PhD soon. You will reach. I don't see my hell. I'm not even sure if I will reach my PhD because I can't be asked to do the tests. That's not true. I can be asked to do the tests, but the books are so stupid. It's anyway. But thank you for the vote of confidence, Dimitri. It's well appreciated. And I'll see you in a moment then, Ludicrous. I'm not sure how long I will be going on though, because then again, the thunderstorm isn't really getting closer. Try walking in a black church and telling them that their beliefs are whiteness. Nick, I know a lot of black people who will laugh at this man. There's a black woman owning a shop in the center of the city, Ruby. And a few years back, we started talking. And obviously, we had a good talk. So I asked her, because that's the idiot I am, so how many chances did you have? And she said, well, what do you mean how many chances did you have? Well, people are talking about how the Netherlands are racist as well. And she was like, how is the Netherlands racist? I have two shops. I work, and she's a woman from Suriname. So the Dutch and the Surinamers have a history, because Suriname used to be a colony since the 1980s. Because in 1980 it got, I can't remember the precise year, but Suriname became an independent country. And she's like, but I've been in the Netherlands, and yeah, sure, I've met people who were discriminating towards me. But that doesn't mean everyone is discriminating towards me. So the whole idea that I'm a lesser person because other people might discriminate me is bullshit. Because people discriminate other people. I discriminate other people. Because to discriminate means that you have a preference and you have a lesser preference. So, it's kind of funny because she once had a shop apparently. She lived for a while in Poland. My wife is from Poland, so they started talking a little bit of Polish. She had a white Polish girl working for her. The whole idea of putting people of certain ethnicities against each other has nothing to do with creating a utopia. Has nothing to do with creating a stable society. It has all to do with disrupting our society. And by claiming that a certain group of people is always the victim and a certain group of people is always the perpetrator, you are creating an us versus them mentality. This is not about whiteness. This is about how can I divide a society. Anyway, whiteness in action, inside and out. When targeting individual, whiteness opportunistically attaches to any psychic structure that maps self and object vertically. These vertical planes are ubiquitous and as such provide an abundance of potential host receptors for parasitic whiteness. I'm sorry, I can't even pretend to make a normal sentence of this. This is absolute word garbage. Okay, 6 separate yet intersecting such planes should be kept in mind here. And we all know what people mean when they talk about intersectionality, right? It's basically saying, how can I find a way to subvert this and make it fit my narrative? The ego's foundation in a vertical split, pleasure inside, pain outside, good subject here, bad object there. The original object then is the bad object, and the demeaned one below and threatening, of whom Freud writes, the ego hates, abhors, and pursues with intent to destroy. Yes, that is something Freud said. But the ego hates, abhors, and pursues with the intent to destroy whom? Or what? And the superego is there to keep the ego in check. So, yeah, sure. Bullshit. Anyway, the subject-object world of the paranoid schizoid position, the emerging subject here is in constant struggle to maintain itself against threat emerging from bad objects, to withstand them, and finally to fix and locate them elsewhere enough below enough to settle in, to keep going. Yes, this is also true. If you have a paranoid schizoid position, which basically means you think certain things and you have the feeling certain things are real, you need to deal with this and you need to fix it and put it somewhere. This is true for any problem a person can have. This has nothing to do with parasitic whiteness. This has to do with being a person. Oh, that is a great sentence. Whiteness opportunistically attaches to any psychic structure that maps self and objects vertically. Yeah, I agree, John. It absolutely means fuck all. The subject-object world of narcissism, of grandiosity and diminishment, of the master and the slave, of the all and the nothing, the highest and the lowest. Those are the extremes people walk in. And if we're talking the master and the slave, most people will not perceive themselves as a master nor slave. It's kind of funny because there's this old socialistic song in German, and I can't remember it fully, but there's a verb, there's a part in it that goes like this. I'm translating it in English. No, I'm going to sing it in German first, because weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, hat Stiefel ins Gesicht nicht gern. Will unter sich kein Sklave sehen und über sich kein Herrn. Basically translated, because humans are humans, they don't like, how do you call it, discomforting opportunities, or they don't like to see difference in status. They don't want to see a master over them, and they don't want to have a slave under them. So the idea of the master and slave in the Western world, that is as far as acceptable from a person as you can get. There are hardly any... Hell, even if you look at the BDSM sexual relationship between a man and a woman, and there is this concept of master and slave, the slave has all the power, because she can end it, or he, because you have male slaves as well, can end it with a word. Because the concept of the master-slave sexual relationship is no more than a form of role play. Because in reality, people don't want to see slaves. They don't want to be them. They don't want to have them under them. Or they don't mind having employees, but an employee is an equal or slightly less equal, but still a person of free will. That's not a slave. To imagine that this is written by someone who is a psychoanalyst, it's beyond stupid. There is no way of trying to pretend that there's anything substantive in this. The subject-object world of perversion, of the user and the used, the person and the thing, the whole and the part, the owner and the owned. Again, this is point 3, which we already said this is crap. And I'm sorry, the whole and the part, but I mean, you cannot be a whole with a part of you not being part of you. Because if there's a part of you that's not part of you, you're not whole. The owner and the owned, the master and the slave again. The dominator and the dominated. Now, in all fairness, if again we look at BDSM, where there is a domination matrix within the relationship, it's not... Oh, damn it, I need to take a sip. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much. There we go. If we look at a BDSM relationship, a dominator and dominated relationship, it's the dominated that has the power. I mean, if there's a true dominator and dominated situation, so we're talking about, for example, let's take Russia, communist Russia, not current Russia, communist Russia. Yeah, I mean, the people there were definitely dominated. If we're looking at China, if we're looking at Cuba, there you have a clear dominator and dominated situation where stability is not part of the story. There, dominator and dominated is a part of strife. I'm watching electric cars race in Mexico too. Okay. Let me know who wins. I have a cue for the author. Remove the stick from his butt. Yeah, that might help. Probably not a lot though. The subject-object world of the Oedipal triangle. Oedipal triangle? I have to look that in because I can't remember the Oedipal triangle. Sorry. The Oedipal triangle, according to Freud. Let me see what I can find on it. Okay, that's. I'm sorry, guys. It's a long time ago. I can't really find it fast. I'm sorry. It has something to do with yourself, the imaginary other, and the imaginary symbolic, or rather yourself, your mother, and your father. And between those three, you are becoming a person whilst constantly being affected by the role of your mother and the role of your father, which is true for everyone. And then the role of your mother and your father is slowly being taken away, and it's being replaced by people that will have a role in your life as well. But I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that here. Ooh, that was a weird sound. The subject-object world of the Oedipal triangle, of higher and lower. There are two lowers in a Oedipal triangle. Of power and powerlessness. There is no powerlessness in the Oedipal triangle. Of having and not having. Of being able to and not being able to. Those are, how do you call it? What is it? Of being able and not being able to. Of satisfaction and despair. Those are not Oedipal triangles. These are goals and limitations. Let me see what this is. Where does it do? Oh, here. Here is a clear and representative Kleinian conceptualization of the vertical plane. Okay, let me see if I can find. Because Kleinian, that's the name I haven't heard of a very long time, so I can't remember it. I am sorry, I am an old man and all that. See, that's why I didn't know it. Oh no, wait a second, I need the other one. Kleinian is a thingy thought up by Okay, I can't find it. That's interesting. It's kind of funny because there are two Kleinian principles. One of them is in mathematics, and there is a Kleinian psychological theory, but I don't really know that one. Melanie Klein emphasizes the importance of early relationship in the development of self-object. While Kleinian theory is often thought as to be neo-Freudian, it may be better described as neo-Adlerian. Okay. That doesn't mean anything to me. I'm sorry. I will look into that for a later date, maybe. Here is a clear representation of Kleinian conceptualization of the vertical plane. Disillusionment opens up a gap between the self and the object. Yeah. A gap that's, to start with, is filled by chaos, leading to panicky feeling of falling into a terrifying unknown. Normally, the mother's love saves the day since it creates a link and is felt to rescue the baby from the abyss. But if this fails and the pain, humiliation and fear are undesirable, the horizontal gap between self and breast becomes a vertical gap with only two positions, triumph or humiliation. The longing for love is then replaced by the longing for power. The patient inhabits an up and down universe in which strength fueled by hatred is idealized and love is seen as weak and contemptible. The patient is seduced by the belief that to become big via a massive projective identification with the idealized bad objects takes a second, while growing up is always partial, insecure, and takes time and hard work. Okay, Basically, what they're talking about here is... I'm sorry, yeah, I don't know everything. Yeah, I tend to be all-knowing, but reality kind of hacks it up time and again. But yeah, what they're talking about here is basically the insecurities that we feel. And these insecurities can become gaps. Now, and sometimes the mother saves the day, a mother's love, which is true for babies. But in certain points, the father can take over this role as well, where he can educate a child to grow in a certain way. So, in all fairness, both parents can have the job of saving the day from time to time. But when something goes wrong, humiliation is a pain, and it can cause people to stop doing certain things. And in a way, I am reading lefty porn. But when people talk about a horizontal gap, they're talking about the distance from you to your goal. And when they're talking about a vertical gap, they're talking about the distance from you. If you're going to fail, how deep is your failure going to be? This is a very oversimplification, though, in all fairness. But yeah, people can be scared of certain things, and this can create what you can also call runaway behavior. And runaway not as in you do stupid stuff, but runaway as in you aren't going to face your challenges, you're going to run away from them. Yeah, there's quite a long gap between the synapses. Well, not about this example, but definitely about the rest of the text. The subject-object world of the authoritarian superego. Superego is not about subject. Listen to this representative example. I was a decent person with her, with my dog Cleo. I was never sadder than when she died. Stupid fucking stupid. Shut up. Why'd I say that? Just babbling, get to work. What's a fucking dog got to do with anything? You fat piece of shit. The interior verticality is obvious, the severity, the top-down conviction, the malign domineering, the tyrannical accuser, the cowering accused. No, idiot, what you're talking about are the stages of grief. I was a decent person with her. Basically, I'm consoling myself. I was never sadder than when she died. I'm explaining myself. Stupid. Fucking stupid. This is my anger. Shut up. This is my anger. Why did I say that? This is me questioning myself. Just babbling. Me explaining myself. Get to work. This is a flight response. What's a fucking dog got to do with anything? This is a flight response. You fat piece of shit. This is a flight response. Because, and I'm going to go through them once again, I was a decent person with her. Basically, I'm going to tell myself I did everything I could to give her a good life. I don't really see a lot of denial in this one, though. This is basically trying to help me lift myself up, because I need to deal with this pain. I was never sadder than when she died. This is recognition. Stupid, fucking stupid. This is anger. Shut up. This is anger. Why did I say that? That's me recognizing that what I'm doing isn't in line with who I am. What is happening to me? Just babbling. This is me explaining myself why I'm doing this. Because and this is a form of denial, I don't want to see the pain I'm in. Get to work. This is me finding distraction. Because I want to get away from this pain. What's a fucking dog got to do with anything? Again, and this is a form of denial. This is also a flight response. I'm trying to get away from it, but yeah, then again, denial is. I'm trying to distance myself from my pain. And I can't distance myself from my pain, therefore I need to distance myself from the dog. If I can distance myself from the dog, I don't have to feel the pain. And then, you fat piece of shit, this is just a fight response. Well, it's a flight response. People say fight or flight, and it's basically the same thing. The interior verticality is obvious. The severity, the top-down conviction, the malign domineering. There is no domineering in this one. The tyrannical accuser, the cowering accused. I'm sorry. I don't see a tyrannical accuser. I don't see a cowering accused. So I'm not quite sure where he got that from. But hey, word salad and all that. Along of all these vertical planes, subject-object relationships are defined by power and grounded in the fantasy of sovereignty. And along each of these vertical planes, safety, satisfaction, and pleasure are necessarily fragile and contingent. This is true though. I mean, everything that has value is fragile. Everything I have, everything I am, can be lost. My strength to an objection, my inclusion to exile, my calm over terror. These are a few of the examples. There are more, but everything I have, everything I am, can be lost. This is, how do you call this? I can't find the word now. Not dominating, this is self-awareness, to be honest. This vertical fragility makes us all susceptible to the parasitic whiteness. No, it doesn't. It makes us susceptible to fear. Whiteness promises to turn anxious singularity into confident plurality. This is not true. This is what fear always does. It pretends to have solutions for you. Those solutions aren't real. This is when you come into a system of cognitive dissonance, and it will either totally fuck you up, or at a certain point in time it doesn't matter, so you move on. Anyway, whiteness promises to turn anxiety, singularity into confident plurality. It doesn't. Isolated frailty into collective might. There is no collective in the one. Whiteness caresses its host with reassurances. Never again. It can seem to murmur. Will you have to be alone? An always strained and always jeopardized I am will necessarily be susceptible to this preformed dream of an always empowered we are. But here you go from the individual to the group. But an individual will always be an individual, no matter how coherent the group will be. Because there is always someone in the group who might not agree with you, and at that point in time, you are thrown back to the you. You're going to be thrown back to the individual. And you as a person need to be able to handle criticism. If you can grow from it. If you cannot, you will crash once again. There is no we are. There is only a we are if there is a we against them, an us versus them. But even within the group, there can be an I against you. Now, the I against you mustn't be bigger than the we. But it can only not be bigger if I know who the I am. So you're always going to be thrown back to I. Unless, of course, you're going to be dominated. But that's not a stable society. But of course, whiteness does not limit its opportunistic work to individuals. It easily infiltrates even groups founded on the protection of the individuals, on democratic principles, on a systemic concern for fragile singularities. But wait a second, if that's true, then it can't be. Because if whiteness easily gets into a group that wants to protect the weak or the minority, then how can... I mean, that would mean that protecting people in minority situations is a form of whiteness. Which I can somewhat understand, but basically what he's then talking about, that the discrimination, the bigotry of low expectation is whiteness. But if that's true, it's a thing that comes from the red wing. From people like who wrote this piece. Because these are the people that, how do you call it, push forward the idea of bigotry of low expectations. But that means that you are the one that says, well, some group of people are high and some group of people are low, and we need to pay more attention to the low people. But you're also saying that this is a form of whiteness. Because I'm empowered and I can try to empower them. Look how benevolent I am. Fucking hell. But of course, whiteness does not limit its opportunity work to individual. Bloody hell. Anyway. Opportunistic whiteness then can provide an instantaneous alternative, readily transforming the group of democratic impulses into nativistic ones. So basically what you're saying, opportunistic whiteness is using its whiteness to create an impulse that we are nativistic. All with susceptible individual, all parasitic whitening need from its susceptible pluralities is a disruptive collision with a verticality, a threat from below. But that means that you are affected by parasitic whiteness. And anyone can bring that threat from below, because as soon as someone says, yeah, but wait a second, you're the one who's being discriminatory towards people, both the white people and the people that are not white, then you will see this as a disruptive collusion. Not a collusion, sorry. A disruptive collision. And you will sense that as a threat. Whiteness is always ready to respond to such a threat, to answer the call. Once installed, its epistemology of entitled dominion will license its host, its individual or group, to power without limit, force without restriction, violence without mercy. Welcome Antifa. Whiteness now enjoys the liberty of freely enact its foundational epistemology of entitled dominion. Welcome Black Lives Matter. Entitled dominion not only defines its object, we can see them gathering at our southern border, it also sets up the frame inside of which all definition is possible. I somehow now have an image of Maxine Waters. Anything outside the frame is, by virtue of its outsidedness, both unreal and impossible. The voice of whiteness, entitled dominion, inside or out, is firm and final. Therefore, we are so clear to say that Trump never could have won, because the voice of whiteness said that Biden must have won. This is not desire, this is sickness. You are not in need, you are a failure, you are not your own, you are ours. Welcome to the Red Wing mindset. Fucking hell. This person is a fascist. He's talking about how he feels other people should be, but he is indeed projecting himself. Well, that's not fair. I am saying he's projecting himself. What I'm seeing is a lot of red wing narratives. But you know what, guys? We've been at it for 2 hours. I'm pretty sure you guys had enough. What about the gap between the synapses? It seems too long for a distance. Yeah. Okay. Anyone have anything interesting to say so far? This person believes non-white people are deviants. Yes. But then again, not all white people. Only the white people who do not believe what he believes. If an article is not peer-reviewed by Modwayne before publication, then they risk humiliation. Well, I tried my best, but seriously, criticism, as always, is more than welcome. This text resembles a lot of what Goebbels said in the day about that religion there. Yes, that is true. But Goebbels was kind of talking about Muslims, so yeah, he probably wasn't allowed to do that. Then again, at the time, Muslims were allies to the German. I have seen people refer to white people as species. And same for men. That's really disturbing. Genuine dehumanization. This is completely true, John. But that's what they're constantly doing. That's why this is red wing rhetoric. It's all about subversion and destroying. It's okay, go on. Well, I'm not going to go on, mate. It's 2 o'clock. Well, it's not 2 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock. I could continue next Saturday if you want to. Sure. If I get... how many people are in here? If I get at least 10 likes, I will... I already have 8 likes. So it's not fair. Okay, you know what, guys? Post under it if you want me to continue. If you want me to continue, I will continue next week from personal reflections onward. So yeah, post it under the video. There are 8 likes, so if 6 people say yeah, continue with this one, I will continue with this one. And if anyone wants to read it and join me, let me know. Yeah, I already have 8. Oh, I already have 9 likes now. Oh, already 8 people said this week. Oh, fucking hell. But no, that's no problem. I don't mind doing this next week. Because, yeah, you know what? It is frustrating. It really is. But at the same time, it gives me something to do, I guess. Okay, that one gone, that one gone. That one back. I see 10 likes on my screen. Okay, well, I only see 8. Well, I saw 8 when I said 10. I now see 9 likes on my screen. So that's why I'm not saying 9 likes. I'm saying, what did I say? 6? 6 posts. Yeah, I only see 9 likes according to my humble thingy. If you don't like the video, hit this like button twice. Oh, I'm going to use that in the future, Ludicrous. I am. That's brilliant. Well, yeah, now I see 10 likes too. How about that? Okay, guys, I'm sorry. Yes, next week we will continue with this one. I'm not even halfway in yet, but we can do that. But can you imagine? I didn't even read as far as I did when I pre-read the piece a little bit. I'm still somewhat hoping that when I get to the end of the article, it's going to be, haha, fooled you, something like that. There are 8 likes there. Freedom is freedom to say 2 + 2 = 4. Everything else comes with it. Well, yeah, that is true. There are 10 likes. Michael Keller says there are 11 likes. Yes. I'm going to do it next week. If you don't like this video, hit the dislike button twice. It's a really good one, Ludicrous. Yeah, I may be needing to do that one. And, share if you instead of saying share if you like it, etc., etc. I should say if you don't like it, just hit the dislike button twice. Okay, we were at personal reflection, so this is where I will start it next week. I'll be able to set it up now then. Yeah, sure, why not? Anyway, guys, unless someone wants to say something or want to join in the hangout for a small while, I guess it's time for me to call it quits. I mean, we have been going for quite a while. Yeah. Good people of the web, I wish you a good night's sleep, and thank you for joining us, Michael and Ludicrous and John and Dimitri and Nick and William and Green, and I'm terrible with names. I see that a bunch of people are still here, which is always a good thing. I do appreciate your feedback, guys, so thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you all next week. Bye bye.
Oh, that was fun.
It was.